when Magi came, where I originally met her, um, our GM could definitely see that there was like a big problem, but he didn't know how to get out of it. He had a certain personality, but there were a lot of people who were loyal to the GM who was there before. There were a lot of people who really weren't loyal to anyone. They were just kind of on their own mission to do whatever they thought was right. And it was kind of like, it wasn't necessarily that a ton of illegal things were happening, but it was that a lot of managers and supervisors and stuff were just kind of assholes. And to be frank, and it didn't work. For me personally, I had been hired. I knew the HR manager personally. I had been hired there. I was trained by her, and I was having a reputation problem. I started there when I was 18 years old. I was working my way up in HR, and I was full time at that point. I worked there through college, so I was part time for some of it. But I was having a really hard time connecting with the people. I was having a hard time building relationships. I was very bossy, and I was very quick to blame and become the victim, and also still to this day somewhat very quick to like get pissed off and start throwing punches, and not at the time not realizing that that was what I was doing. The first level set was just our executive team, so there's 6 people. I think by the end of the 6 people who went to the original one, 2 had opted to leave. They didn't believe that they were the right fit for the role, or they weren't willing to do the work to get to the right place with the vision and then we did a second one with like our managers and supervisors. And what I'll say about the level set experience is that you go into it, you have no idea what the heck you're getting into, and then they ask you to do some really wild stuff. Like, well, I don't want to give away too much, but they ask you to do some really wild stuff. And you get a choice to either throw yourself into that and trust the process, or not participate. And I would say it was probably about half and half of people who were willing to really go into it. And I think the hardest part of the level set in general was that you sit in a room with these people that you work with, and everybody's throwing out everything that they think is wrong. You could be sitting there listening to them talk about something wrong with you for 10 minutes. And you sit there and you listen to it and you take the feedback and you realize like, oh, or you look at the list and you're like, oh, I'm contributing to that. So you kind of go through the process of not only like getting things off of your chest of like what you're frustrated about, but you also go through the process of like, oh, I'm part of the problem. Accepting that, particularly when you have people telling you exactly what you're doing wrong, is not the most pleasant experience I've ever had. But it was a very impactful experience. And by the end of it, what I'll say is the group of us who went, everyone was on board, and we were a really tight-knit group that was able to communicate better and effectively. And we kind of were able to grow with each other and give each other grace when we slip back into some of the old habits that we had. The level set, that was my experience. I left and I was like, that was incredible. And then I went back home and I got to implement some of it at home. I lost 75 pounds. I had a very different outlook on life and the way that I approach things. And slowly but surely, I went from being a very disliked person in HR to being very well liked and becoming the manager on the executive team by the time I left.